Heat Pick, or Hail to You, geeks. And today, we're challenging you to conquer your fate. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. My name is Kev, and today we're giving you our spoiler-free thoughts on the biggest, boldest, most mainstream outing from Robert Eggers yet. Now, Conquer Your Fate is not the title of the movie we're looking at today. It was just the slogan used on a series of promotional posters in which the actual title was nowhere to be found. Of course, I'm talking about The Northman. Joining me today, you best be believin' he's a full-fledged heathen. An animalistic berserker who's the podcast world's hardest worker. It's JLaw in Njal, or JLaw the Giant. What's up, dude?
Oh, some nice Norse mythology name.
Yeah,
for
little
me. I love
Icelandic.
that. Icelandic, I love it. What would yours be?
Just throw in Kevin the Very Gigantic. But yeah, you doing well?
Doing well, man. Doing well.
Awesome. Well, today we are facing ferocious sea crossings, we're facing the unruly heat of flowing volcanoes, and we're fighting for our lives in explosive battles. But that's because we're talking about The Northman. From visionary director Robert Eggers comes The Northman, an action-filled epic that follows a young Viking prince on his quest to avenge his father's murder. The film boasts an all-star cast that includes Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Cleese Bang, Anya Taylor-Joy, Ethan Hawke, Bjork, and Willem Dafoe. A huge thanks to Focus Feature and Touchwood PR for letting us check this out before it hits theaters on April 22nd. And you know what? Given the cloudy skies and thunder in the background, as we have some nasty weather here these days, it seems the mighty Norse gods would like us to get this thing started without any further ado. So why don't we just sink our axes into this bad boy, and we'll start where we always start, with what worked.
Well, I think you said a couple things. Robert Eggers obviously bringing his style of storytelling to this sort of mythological narrative. It worked. It actually worked really well. The use of longing shots and long takes to kind of captivate and add a layer of immersion to the experience of his movies is fantastic. And that is also felt with the outstanding photography from I believe it's Jarin Balchik. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, but the visuals were just like, even right off the bat, there's just this lovely long take that just allows you to feel really immersed in the world that you're in. That definitely has it going for itself. It has a look and a vibe to it that it definitely stems from Robert Eggers' style of storytelling and Jarin Balchik's cinematography. It's next level.
I mean, I'll admit this is the first Robert Eggers movie I've seen, but I know that one of the things a lot of people like to remark on and give him credit for is a sense of historical accuracy that he brings to his work. And so this, for me, something I was mentioning to you just before we saw the movie, how I've been watching the Vikings show that was on History Channel.
Right.
And I know something being on the History Channel doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get historical accuracy as much as you should when you're watching shows like Ice Truckers and Crab Fishers and things like that. But I know that one of their main focuses on Vikings was historical accuracy and really capturing that time frame. And I got very much a sense of that in this movie. It felt authentic. It really did feel like it wasn't a cheap ploy at recreating things for the sake of it. This was meant to feel and act as a history piece for a very interesting period of time in human history. And so I really, really did appreciate that. And then I think one of the things that helped with that was the immersive feel of its presentation. It just looked so epic. It was like, I'm not saying this disparagingly, but it had a very 300 feel to its sort of those Zack Snyder almost sepia tones. It brought this sort of foreboding and darkness to this world wherever you were, right? We never saw sunny skies. We never saw anything. It was always like the Norse gods were looking down on these characters and casting the tone of their lives.
Well, yeah, the skies were very gray, yet the palette of the landscape was very diverse, right?
It really set apart from that. It really was a contrast, absolutely.
Yeah, seeing the parallels of his filmmaking style kind of find its way here, but to your point, telling a very honest, accurate historical story. So I wasn't aware, though, that his other movies that he was very much like that. Sticking with that, I have to say this movie feels very, I said it on Twitter. It might be oversimplifying this, but it feels very Dune, in that it has an epic symphonic sound that just really resonates with you, with immersive visuals that build its own world and feel very fresh for what is Viking lore and Norse lore in the sense of the authenticity. And I also feel like you have outstanding performances. I feel like, for Eggers, this is kind of like his Dune. What Dune was to Denis Villeneuve. It was paying homage and a respect to the story that comes from this.
Yeah, I mean, I almost like that parallel in that this film does do so many different things right, and it's almost Robert Eggers' job to bring those all into one cohesive vision, and he does that really well. Both the performances, we've talked about some of the landscapes and the way it's shot, and again, not to go back too much to it, but just that authenticity. I thought there was a really interesting way of blending this idea of how these people lived with also an overwhelming sense of mythology and blending that as if it were reality. And normally something like that might bug me or take me out of it a little bit, but I think that's how these people lived. So much of their lives, every aspect of their lives was either a tribute to or as a result of what they felt was the gods influencing their lives. And so it was a really interesting narrative tone to bring. You never quite could tell what was really happening or what was actually real, and yet it all just felt real and authentic. So I think that was probably a very difficult balancing act.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that this very much balances itself between secular versus a spiritual, and the way that those lines bleed at times is really, really interesting. But with that, I think we were chatting about this as we were leaving. The spiritual qualities, the sort of even just the sort of tribal primitive side, kind of correlates in a way because of just how far in the past the story sort of takes place, that would still be very much a sort of the religion, if you will, because I believe there's references in this movie as well that I caught about Christians and them kind of being like the new religion and whatnot, and that sort of finding a framework to kind of overtake what is left of the mysticism, the belief in mythology of Viking mythology and Norse mythology. What is it? Is it Viking mythology or Norse mythology, or is it all the same?
It's come to be known as Norse mythology, and yeah, that would have been around. The movie takes place. Again, this isn't necessarily a historical recreation of actual events and actual people, but it takes a lot from events that historically we believe happened, and so this takes place towards the end of the 9th century, around 890 AD. And so at that time, the Norse, the Vikings themselves would have been around for well over 1,000 years here. And they're just sort of branching out. They're now traveling west towards what would become England and learning about Christianity. And it does play a huge role in them questioning what their beliefs are, and in a sense, at first, it really strengthened those. They were right, and the heathens who believed in the one God instead of all the actual gods that existed in the sky above and everything. It was a huge conflict of truth for them that they would engage in over the next several hundred years.
Yeah. So again, like you've pointed out, they don't do anything specific about giving you a timeline or when it takes place. It's through these background elements of what remains and what conversations are being had, and again the visual elements as well, that just kind of helps cement in and around where the story would take place. And I also just I love how they broke that up throughout, like how they kind of feed you this multiple act structure, if you will, to it based on locations. So I think that really does help solidify less of it being about a when, but a where of when this story takes place. Very much, if that makes sense. I don't know if that does.
That's actually a really cool way to look at it, because yeah, I mean, we do sort of get a time jump towards the beginning of the movie, and
right.
And it doesn't specifically say how many years later, but we're given more than enough visual clues and indicators to know that it is, maybe 30 years down the road. But yeah, I like that it's not set in different times as much as we go from one place to another, and those act as our sort of our ground point to let us know where we are and what's going on around us. And now, speaking of what's going on around us, I will say one really cool element of the film is, barbiturates were a big deal in Viking history in terms of they were berserkers or really elite warriors would take barbiturates before battle, and that would transcend them into an almost animalistic rage that would help them be as ferocious and ultimately successful as they were in the battlefield. And this film does such a crazy job of it tripping you out, man. I'm just going to say it simply. Like, you feel like you're on a trip watching this movie half the time. And there's a scene towards the beginning with Willem Dafoe, and you're in the middle of a very animalistic ceremony, and yeah, I felt like I was starting to sweat, like I was in the sweat lodge with them, and like there were so many instances where you felt like you were a part of what was going on around you.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised that didn't take me out of the movie more, in the sense that it almost felt so suddenly so elevated beyond what we were getting. And I think to have a character like Dafoe kind of be a bit of the first introduction to that, as we will then see throughout the rest of the movie, but for him to be that, it kind of actually made sense. Like he served his part in terms of helping to establish that part of this story, this, as you described, the highlighting the barbiturate portion of the narrative. And yeah, I totally agree with you. I was tripping out. I'm like, what are they on, man? Like, that feels whack. But yeah, it was cool. It was definitely a vibe though, right? Like, again, I can't help but call back Dune. Just walking out, like, you've seen so many different sci-fi movies, and you've probably seen a ton of Viking stuff. You just referenced one from history, right? It's like, this is a vibe of its own, almost like how when Gladiator came out, for us back when in 2000, was it when
99 2000, I think. Yeah
99 2000, like, that hit because it was like so authentic, and the authenticity and the history just kind of leaped out of the screen. And yeah, I feel like this does that as well, but for today, obviously, 22 years later, making it really relevant. And yeah, it was just as immersive. So this is such a unique Viking piece that's just so of itself. So
yeah, certainly one of a kind. And the music was, I know you've mentioned it, primal and very tribal, and that really helps carry it. It's I imagine it's the least horror-esque of his three films.
I guess,
but there's still really chilling and terrifying elements that are unsettling. Maybe it's unsettling is what Eggers goes for more than anything.
For sure, it's that psychological horror. It's the thing that fucks with the audience more so than really trying to go in your face. That being said, there is some gore in this, so I don't know if anyone's out there, they're not easy with gore. But again, if you're a Robert Eggers fan, like you're pointing out, Kevin, you might be used to some of the sort of horror elements and whatnot. But yeah, it was brutal. It's such a brutal, like, some of the scenes are absolutely intense, and just, yeah, it's a vibe.
I mean, there's certainly graphic moments, but I mean, we've talked about Gladiator. I would say that was more just in your face blood and guts, whereas these were almost quick moments, or they were almost put in the background. They were almost secondary to what was actually going on. I mean, if somebody's wounded in battle, it happens, but you don't necessarily have to see too much of the end results. Anytime that something really is in your face, it's because it's a significant moment. It's not just, secondary nameless characters in a big open battle getting sliced open. If it's a character we know and have been following, if they're wounded and we are made to see it, it's definitely very intentional.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's all done with purpose. And I think, again, I thought maybe we could just quickly highlight this cast. Alexander Skarsgård is outstanding in this role. He really does commit to the sort of real emotional sides and then also the animalistic sides. He is absolutely brutal. I was very surprised with Nicole Kidman. I actually really, really enjoyed her. Willem Dafoe was we already mentioned, was absolutely was classic Willem Dafoe. It was such a good character for him to play. And Ethan Hawke, man, again, another veteran actor. I was surprised as well. It's like when we were watching the trailer for The Last Duel and seeing Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in a period piece, it's like, Goodwill Jousting. I don't know if I really want to get that. So it's like, I haven't really seen Ethan Hawke in a period piece film. So,
I mean, I would say he was, in my opinion, maybe the weakest of the five main, household name actors in this movie.
That is true. Yeah.
But he also had probably one of the most subdued of those main performances, whereas the three you mentioned already, Skarsgård, Kidman, and Dafoe, they're so
intense.
over the top. They're so over the top that
that's true.
If it was the wrong actor in that role, it wouldn't have worked. It would have come off really silly.
It would have taken you right out.
I can't imagine how much commitment it takes to do some of the scenes and behave the way some of these actors had to behave, and to keep it intensely serious at the same time. It could have come off really, really goofy, but instead these actors sell it so hard that it just comes through the screen. And then I think an opposite performance of that, but equally as powerful, was Anya Taylor-Joy. And she was just mesmerizing in this role.
Yes. My only complaint, and this might transition into one of the things I didn't like, is that I wish we had more of her. I thought she was very cunning. She was brave. She was very mysterious, and she acted the perfect opposite to that of Alexander Skarsgård, right? And I think that fit really well. I just wish there was more of her on the screen. She was a little bit more integral.
That's interesting. I personally found her to be. I liked how you said she was the balance to Alex Skarsgård's really primal animalistic side, and it's his story, so I thought she had the right role. But I mean, unlike Robert Eggers, I don't want to waste too much time and linger on a shot for an unnecessarily long time. So why don't we move into what maybe didn't work so much for this movie?
Yeah, so I like I said, I think that's a small gripe. I think you're right. It is very much this is a revenge story that focuses on one character, and Anya Taylor-Joy, her character was very sidelined. She was serviceable to the role and the balance to his character. I think the other thing that really stood out though too is, this movie has a runtime of 2 hours and 20 minutes, which is a bit long, and you start to really feel it in the sort of last act of the movie, as there's a lot of back and forth trying to decide what's the right sort of way to go here, but we all kind of know what it is. And I think we kind of mentioned this when offline, it's such a simple story that it almost feels like it's so drawn out for this 2 hour and 20 minute runtime. So I think that's my thing. Yeah,
I think that is where the runtime does become an issue. I mean, we do talk about it a lot, but I do think that so many movies, it's almost like they feel they need to be on the screen longer to count, and I think it's more making the minutes you do have on the screen count rather than just racking them up for the sake of it. And you mentioned it perfectly. It's such a simple story that I don't know if it needed to be drawn out as much as it was, but I think a lot of that comes down to simply Robert Eggers' style. I think there's a lot of lingering shots, and while beautiful and stunning to look at, they did at times slow down the pace of the movie. And when this movie's cooking, man, it's going. It's really going. And I understand you need to give the audience a breather. You need to take certain moments to let them simmer and to make them count. But there's just some times where I wanted to get going to the next part. It was
Feels
predictable,
stalled,
it's predictable enough that you know where it's going next. So let me just go there. I want to see it. I'm invested in these characters and their journey. Let me get there. And so that's probably my biggest gripe, is that the pacing is just a little bit too, look at how beautiful my shot is. Why don't we sit on it for a minute too long here and there?
Yeah, maybe that's what it was to help draw out the time, but yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe you're right. Maybe there needed to be less of those shots, but I think to a certain degree, those shots do, at least for me, highlight and actually benefit the movie over pacing issues that I have here. Like, I feel like the visuals were kind of the grounded part of the movie that just helped really layer in the immersion of it. So
I think, like me, you're a little confused about how to feel about this movie. I think that's really where I'm at now as we're reflecting on it. I have far more positives than negatives to say, and yet at the end of the day, something just didn't quite click with me. Maybe I'll be able to better summarize that in giving a final score, but it just something was a little off. But why don't we do that? Let's slice and dice up some scores for this movie, which we'll be doing on a scale of 1 to 5 decapitated enemies.
Yeah, I'll probably be regurgitating some stuff that I tweeted, and I think subliminally must have stuck in my head because I saw tweets later that also referenced the same sort of wordage, but I'm going to reference it anyways. This is a brutal, blood-soaked story of vengeance that does not skip a beat. It is fully immersive. You're immersed in this world of Norse Viking mythology with Scandinavian culture vibes, and it's just eye-grabbing. It's viscerally haunting imagery at times that just adds a layer of spirituality and mysticism and primitive qualities to just the overall film. And I feel like Eggers has found a way to take his style of storytelling and apply it to this authentic, real, period piece inspired story while bringing all sides of it to life and showing the sort of dynamics of what it would be in this real world. We mentioned it already. There are some pacing issues that I think, do kind of show their face towards the end here of the movie. And I think you might be right, Kevin. Maybe it's just having a little bit more of those longing shots. I also think they drew out the character's desire to, commit to their plan a little too long before he actually committed. And it's just like inevitably he was going to. That being said, though, you can't ignore this movie for its style. And like I was saying, much like Denis Villeneuve, like Eggers has found a way to elevate the lore and mythology of Norse and Viking culture to a place where it becomes an immersive experience with longing visuals that are incredibly captivated, a symphonic sound that rumbles inside of you, and performance from a cast that is committed to the story. I think at the end of the day, those things kind of overtook the score for me. I think this is where it really does sing. So I'm going to be giving my score 4 out of 5 decapitated enemies, and that's more for style over substance, in the sense that stylistically there's a lot that works for it, and while the pacing issues are more of the substance, that's forgiven given the fact of just the film that this is. So 4 out of 5 decapitated enemies.
Absolutely. I think that's a really perfect sort of range to rank this. I had a good friend of mine who we've bitterly argued movies for almost 2 decades now, and he said first he was jealous that we got to see this movie early, and then he said, "But Kev, I know you, and you are going to hate this thing." And I will say I did not hate this movie. I've been challenging myself ever since I took my quest to watch all of the Oscar films, to go out of my comfort zone and really watch movies that I wouldn't normally watch, and do so with an open mind. Not just assume I'm not going to like it because it's not my kind of movie, or not just assume, oh, I don't like this guy's other movies or haven't wanted to see them, so this one I won't like either. And, I keep finding myself pleasantly surprised that I'm finding new ways to enjoy cinema. And this certainly brings that to the forefront here. So again, I farthest from hating it, but I don't think I liked this movie either. I just think there was something missing for me to really attach myself to it. I can pinpoint all the things that worked really well. The amazing visuals, the stylistic choices. We talked about the amazing performances. I would say, with exception to the main villain, who I found kind of underwhelming, almost a little not even charismatic as he could have been and should have been in
and
a
not as
world with all
vicious.
these. Yeah, he was just kind of a boring bad guy.
Yeah,
That hurts the sort of vengeance, revenge tale a little bit when you're not sitting in your seat going, kill that guy, And so, other than that, though, the performances were terrific. We've talked about how the music is just chest pumping. It's in your face. And for me, the one really strong element to it was just not necessarily the historical accuracy, but the attention to detail and the desire to represent the time period that it's covering with such authenticity. And that's really what I appreciated, was the authenticity that I felt from this movie. That said, again, though, all of those elements are there, but they never came together to grip me as a whole. And so for that,
oh, interesting.
It's just a bit lacking for me. By the end of it, It was a movie that happened, and I appreciated what I saw, but I didn't necessarily like it all that much. But credit where credit is due. There's some amazing filmmaking going on in this movie, and so for that reason, I'm right around there with you. I'm at 3.9 out of 5 decapitated enemies.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like I knew you were gonna like this movie because of the historical piece, right? I would have, if this was us 2 years ago and the Lighthouse was coming out, I'd be like, no, Kevin, you don't.
I don't think I would have latched on to anything quite as much as I did in this one. You're absolutely right.
For sure.
I had that amazing, epic, historical movie to carry me through.
But I will say, as someone who does know you really well and knows the kind of movies that you like, I think the reliance on visuals over narrative is what really does bug you. I think the idea that this is more of a sort of feeling the moment film where things just are built based on shots and just longing shots and longing looks and just the aesthetic of how things are. While you might appreciate the historical accuracy, if it's not doing anything for the story, then what's the point? That could be stuff that could be cut down, and this movie does not need to be 2 hours and 20 minutes. So I understand. I think I know why this movie didn't necessarily grip you as much, because the story does feel elongated and a little bit more padded out with some of those artful visuals that Edgar and Jarin Balshik, again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Those like the two of them putting this look together, for me, that's what sings, right? And it's funny because I know for you, it's the narrative. So it's cool.
And that's why we work so well, right? We appreciate different things to different levels, and that's what makes us a lot of fun to sort of look at a movie like this, where at the end of the day, we can, for different reasons, we can both say that was really well made, and then our enjoyment level comes in at different levels, right? And that's a great thing to happen.
We've talked about this movie longer than we actually probably thought we would for this review, based on just how much
Fair enough. Maybe I am more like Robert Eggers than I thought, and we've drawn out things. So that's it. I'm wrapping this podcast up until we set sail again. This was our spoiler-free review for The Northman. Thanks so much for tuning in wherever you listen to podcasts. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and leave us a glowing review, or we might just have to go on a revenge mission of our own. As always, reach out and say hi, and let us know if you'll be checking out this newest Robert Eggers film. You can do so at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com, or if that reminds you a little bit too much of Willem Dafoe swinging around his big old battle axe, hit us up on Twitter at GeekcentricYT and Instagram at wearegeekcentric. Keep in mind, we also have a ton of other episodes covering a wide variety of other content, with new content coming out all the time. Currently, we have our spoiler-free review for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Justin also got the chance to sit down and interview the Daniels, the brilliant minds behind that mind-melding movie. Our ongoing watch club for Disney Plus's Moon Knight is coming at you every week, and so is our weekly show This Week in Geek, where we recap the news and trailers and everything else from around the Geekyverse. But until next time, JLaw and everyone listening, thank you so much for joining me, and as we say, get home safe, guys.
Peace.